Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Exploring DC, where we take a piece of DC and explore it with you. I am your host, Josh, and today we'll be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. With me is my co-host, Jalen and Jackson. Jackson, are you holding a sneezing?
Dude, yes. I'm sick. I'm very sick right now. And I feel like I have to sneeze. But it's not coming out, and that's really unfortunate. But I
feel
couldn't
like
miss this. I couldn't miss this.
It's fortunate
For
for
the
the
for the
audio
listener at
listeners.
home, yes. Yes it is. I'm my whatever's on your side, my body.
Yeah. Are you spending enough time outside? You gotta get the
Dude,
sunlight.
I did not step outside today. I watched a solid 13 episodes of Family Guy.
This might be why you're sick, man.
No, okay, no. I stayed inside and watched 13 episodes of Family Guy because I was sick.
Mm,
I was sick.
that's what
I had a fever, and so I didn't go outside and I stayed in and watched Family Guy. Tomorrow I'm clocking in at work at 9 a.m.
Oh, okay. So you'll be back. You'll be back.
I'll be
Jalen,
fine tomorrow.
Jalen, how are you?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about this movie. I'm excited to see you guys' thoughts.
It's the last one.
Yeah, it's the last. It's the last one. It's the last
The
one.
gun
guys.
is loaded.
Superman is next. So I'm excited to see you guys' final thoughts on this film before we enter into bigger and better.
Yeah,
Guys, we've been on a journey. We've been doing
the
this
gun is
for
loaded.
like 3 months now of solid Superman episodes, watching a movie a week most of these weeks. We are on the final one. When this comes out, I will have seen Superman. You guys will be going to see it like the next day or the day of when this drops. So it'll be crazy. Next time we record together, we'll all be
Yeah.
post launch. How are we feeling right now?
First,
Energy-wise. Just the vibe of wrapping this series up and
dude,
ready
I'm
to-
so ready for Friday. I am so excited for Superman.
It feels like Christmas Eve, man.
I know, dude. I'm really looking forward to this, man. It snuck up on me a little bit, but it's here and I'm ready.
Yeah, it's crazy too because we've been prepping for it for months, and
Yeah.
yet it still
Oh,
feels
yeah.
like it just flew by.
Yeah, it almost
Yeah,
like
this
it
is
almost doesn't
such
feel.
an interesting.
Yeah, it almost like doesn't feel real a little bit, where it's like you can
No, I
remember
agree with that.
announcement 2 years ago in January, and it's like now
Yeah.
we're finally here, and it's like, man, like I don't
Uh-huh.
know what to expect. I have a good feeling about it, but I still am like, if it's just the first DC movie that I think in a while for me, it feels like an event. It feels like everyone is excited to go see it, whether they're gonna walk.
First
in
time
with that.
since the Batman for me.
Yeah, the Batman too. I completely forgot about that. Like the hype surrounding it, but like, man, it's definitely
Yeah.
a good feeling as like DC fans.
It's so good, but we have one last one to wrap up, and this is quite a doozy. Zack Snyder's Justice League. We talked about Man of Steel. We talked about BVS. Now we're wrapping it up. Directed again, obviously by Zack Snyder. Screenplay only by Chris Terrio this time around. So David S. Goyer's like completely off the map at this point. And then the story was by Terrio, Snyder, and Will Beal, who's a former LA police detective, and for some reason helped out with the story on this one. Which I thought was interesting.
That's random.
Okay,
Story here. Determined to ensure Superman's ultimate sacrifice was not in vain, Bruce Wayne aligns forces with Diana Prince with plans to recruit a team of metahumans to protect the world from an approaching threat of catastrophic proportions. Crazy huge cast here. We know a lot of them. Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill,
Oh, it's huge.
Amy Adams, Gal Gadot, Diane Lane, a lot of the old carryovers. This time, though, Ray Fisher, Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, they all get way bigger roles as the Justice League. And then Ciaran Hinds is our bad guy as Steppenwolf. And then there's like a million other people, especially in this cut, because he reshot scenes with people like Mira and Deathstroke and all of that. So pretty much every DCEU actor from that like first phase of movies is referenced or relevant to this. Music here by Tom Holkenberg, Junkie XL. He was going to do the music for Justice League, and then they kicked him off for Danny Elfman. But then they brought him back, and he did an entirely new score, which is like one of the longest scores ever, is what I hear. His score for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go buy the vinyl for this, it's like 5 or 6 discs. It's massive.
Really? Do you like the score here, Jackson?
It's an interesting one.
There's some really good
I
tracks.
I do enjoy it. Like, I enjoy it. It's never boring. It's just fascinating. Some of the
Some of those
choices
needle
made.
drops, bro.
Not even like
Some of those, they're interesting.
the needle drops are fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's I love the Flash theme though when he runs back
Oh
in time.
yeah,
I
yeah.
still
That's
always
the
think about
best.
that one.
That's the best track in the whole movie. I don't think there's a single person on this planet that would deny that.
And then last one here, budget of 70 million. That was for the reshoots, and they only reshot like 5
What was that?
minutes.
Was that
worth
also
of
for the
material.
VFX?
Yep, for the VFX. But also to shoot the nightmare sequence and some of
Yeah.
and the end sequence and all that. But the original movie was a budget of 300 million and a box office of 657 million. So it was projected to lose 60 million roughly. So the original
Not
was
a
success.
not a profitable endeavor.
Not, especially compared to how successful BVS
Yeah.
was, which we talked about last week. Production here, I feel like everyone that's listening kind of knows the general gist, but just a brief recap. Justice League happens. BVS was way too dark, so they pivot. They try to go lighter with the story. With both, they re-edited Suicide Squad to death to make it lighter, and then they edited Justice League, the script, and made it a lot more lighter. But it still was too dark. Snyder had a completed, semi-complete cut, and they were like, we need to bring in Joss Whedon to do reshoots and add dialogue. So Whedon and Snyder were working together. Everything was going right. Then, unfortunately, Snyder's daughter passed away, and he kind of had to step back. And then they basically fired him and had Whedon redo the whole movie. And it's a mess. That's not the one we're talking about today, but you guys have seen it.
We'll get there at some point, I'm sure.
We'll reference it. It's a whole thing. Anyway, a couple years pass by, and they start the release of Snyder Cut movement, which was a huge fan campaign. Probably one of the only majorly successful fan campaigns in the... it doesn't happen very often. I know Save Daredevil was another one that ended up working out, but it usually does not happen that these hashtags go anywhere. But it was a huge thing, and then by May 2020, when we were all locked down, they announced that HBO Max was going to have it, which is really exciting. And then, it came out. It was a very surreal time. That was when they were doing all the day and date stuff on Max too. It was 2021 for WB was quite a year. And then that's about it. So I'm going to start off, Jackson, Jalen. What is your experience with the original Justice League?
Well, okay, I actually wanted to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen that original Justice League since it was in theaters?
Many times.
Yes.
Many
You
times.
have?
But not since this movie came out.
Okay, I watched it like
very recently.
twice in theaters and then maybe once in theaters and then never again. Why?
When I was...
Do you hate
so
yourself?
I think... Well, no.
You
but-
could watch anything else.
when I think the other movies were coming out, like Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, The Flash, I would go back and rewatch certain movies, or I would rewatch every movie that had came out before that, just because I like doing that type of stuff. The completionist in me.
You're not even watching the
enough-
one that's considered canon.
Well, that's the thing though, is that ironically enough, this was maybe my third time rewatching this since it first released on HBO Max or Max, whatever it's called, years ago. But yeah, it was interesting, which I'm sure we'll get into the thoughts and all that other stuff later on. But it was interesting rewatching this one, especially seeing how much of this holds up and how much of this for me was better than it was the previous two times.
Interesting.
Well, let me just ask
So you
more specifically, Jalen, where were you kind of in that 2021 era when this was coming out? Were you a big part of this campaign, or were you
No, I
surprised
wasn't.
that it was coming out?
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't start to dislike the Justice League version until my second or third rewatch, and then I realized how bad it actually was. It came out when I was 14. Mind you, and I wasn't as into movies and stuff. I was just kind of I saw a comic movie, I instantly kind of thought it was good, except for very, very, very few comic book movies that I was like, this isn't my favorite. But like I remember when I first watched Justice League, it gave me such a. It felt at the time so comic booky, and it felt at the time like I was like, man, this is what I had been asking for, like a happy Superman, you know. The Batman, he was jokey, but at the same time, I was such a big MCU fan, I didn't care. It might be 14. You know, I was like, you know, this is so cool, you know. And then I got Wonder Bat. I got little hints of Wonder Bat. But it's like the older I got, and the more times I rewatched it, the more that you really start to see those issues in script, in color, specifically color and tone, and characterization. The characterizations, even though at the time when I was a kid they felt like more in line with the comic book, when you get older, it feels so different from, you know, what came before with BVS, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Man of Steel, up until that point, and especially Ben Affleck's Batman felt like a 180 from what was already established with his character previously. So no, I definitely wasn't a part of the campaign. But then when it finally did come out, I was like, okay, this is cool, let's check it out. And I watched it, and I liked it even better than the first time I watched Justice League.
Awesome. Jackson, that was 2021 when that was coming out. Me and you were both very active in the comic book spaces online. Where were you kind of with everything?
I'm on record as saying that I didn't think a Snyder cut existed, in the sense that I didn't think there was a releasable cut just sitting in a vault in WB.
Which
there wasn't, obviously. In my opinion, I was always of the opinion that Warner Brothers would never dump the $50 to $100 million needed to, you know, put it out there. That just wasn't a profitable endeavor. It still wasn't a profitable endeavor, but they did it anyways, and I'm so glad they did. I was really happy when it was announced, surprised, because I never really thought they'd do it. But COVID was just a weird time, I suppose, right?
Right. I think they were just desperate to get eyes on their streaming service, and having a Justice League movie in any shape or form was huge around then. But yeah, I remember I was running DC TV Center on Instagram, so I was very active during this time. I also remember Godzilla and Kong vs. Kong was coming out like 2 weeks later, so it was just like a whole WB thing going on. But I don't know, I was never a big part of the movement. I also didn't think that like it was ever going to come out, so I never paid huge attention to it. And when it got announced, I really got into it, and I really got into the whole Snyderverse stuff. But then the fandom with it, we can talk about, got pretty toxic with it. And so knowing where they were planning on taking things, I'm kind of glad it got contained as it is. My one show and tell today is I do have a fancy 4K that I got.
I had that too.
Which is so cool to get a streaming release, because, you know, it came out on HBO Max, and you don't normally get those things on physical, but I'm glad they put one out. Yeah, this... I did want to mention, I watched the Justice is Gray edition yesterday to prep for this, so I watched the...
Really? Mm-hmm. I haven't watched that yet.
It was really neat. I don't think it's one that you'd watch multiple times, but it's like the Logan black and white version, where it's just a nice novelty to check out.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, but wasn't that how Snyder wanted to just release the movie, period?
I believe so, because that's what he originally screened it to WB people. He screened it in black and white.
Yeah.
I think it works, but obviously the color just makes everything come out so much more, especially with scenes like Barry's lightning and Superman's like rise into the sun. It's way less effective in black and white.
Yeah.
But the atmosphere is really cool in other scenes, like a lot with Batman and stuff. But I did want to mention that, because that's the one I did watch.
That's interesting.
I had to check it on HBO Max.
Cool. Yeah, no, I do want to watch that at some point. I've been curious about that.
Well, I was like, I don't know when I'm going to rewatch this next, so let me just knock this out now, so it's not like 2 years down the line. So that's, you know, that was my whole thought process. There's a lot to pack here. I think we're going to tackle each character would be a nice way to do it. But I also just kind of want to get the general structure and your guys' thoughts on...
Well, yeah, I mean, if I may cut in real quick, I think a disclaimer that is important to kind of mention here is that oftentimes when we talk about these movies and what we've done since we started reviewing all these Superman films, is we've detached the production, any production troubles from the actual substance of the movie. So we
Hmm.
very much separated the final product from what went on behind the scenes, especially with like some of those the everything after Superman 1 in terms of the Reeves films. But you can't really do that with the Snyder Cut. It's one of the few films where I think the circumstances under which it was created and released are kind of essential to talking about the actual content of it. Like they kind of go hand in hand, which we'll get into that in more depth,
Right.
I'm sure. But I think that's an important thing to mention.
No, it is. We'll definitely have to, because the whole thing's going to be a comparison game essentially to what came before.
Not
The
even that, but it's just the fact that um, this movie is completely uncompromised
yeah,
for better and for worse. It is. All right, sorry, we got cut off there for a sec. Basically, yeah, it is one of the only, sorry, probably the only comic book film to release that is completely, utterly uncompromised, minus one little thing. Um, so with that comes a lot of baggage, good and bad.
yeah,
Uh, there's a lot of things in here that like if Snyder were to have released his film in theaters, it would not be this movie, nothing close to it. It would probably be an hour and a half shorter. There's a lot of fat here you could trim off, but like the fact that it wasn't is kind of what makes it appealing in the same way, you know?
yeah. That's a great starting point, Jackson. Is just that. How do we feel about this being that uncompromised to that level? Because it is 4 hours. It is in 4:3 aspect ratio. It is very overstuffed with everything, and we already had BVS Ultimate Edition clocking in at 3 hours, and this is an hour
Yeah.
more. And it's all completely new footage. None of it is Joss Whedon footage.
hmm
I guess I'll start with you, Jackson. Like, how do you? Does it go too far with being a director's cut?
Again, it's hard to talk. That's a tricky thing, right? Because objectively, I look at this movie and I'm like, there are things you could cut out of it, but I don't
Hmm.
know that I would. I don't know that I'd want it that way. I feel like the fact that this is a expensive ass movie that is the complete uncompromised vision of a director is so rare. And I think having that is really special, even if there are some things, especially in the last 20 minutes, that I could have done without. But like I think the nicest thing I can say about this movie is that it doesn't feel like 4 hours. Every time I watch it, I'm surprised by just how sucked into the world I get and just how fast it moves, you know? And especially because it's a movie that's paced so slowly. Like it's literally 2 hours. I think I counted as like an hour and 56 minutes until Batman even puts his suit on.
So yeah, I mean, like when it comes to Zack Snyder's vision and fully playing that out, kind of like Jackson said, I do feel like there is definitely some fat in here that you could have definitely cut out in a sense. But when it comes to, I guess, just seeing this full story completed, right? And especially because I'm sure Zach, in his mind, he knew he was like, okay, this would be like my last opportunity to tell this story, so I want to finish it up as much as I can, and like leave little bits and pieces here that leave people
Yeah.
wanting more, and the whole Snyder, fan effect that has happened with Rebel Moon. That's just what is a part of the Zack Snyder branding at this point. Um, but I do, I mean, see, and that's the weird thing is that like looking at this as just a straight up movie is kind of hard because it's not a straight up movie on its own. It's a better, more extended cut from another director of
Right.
an already
I see what you're
established
saying.
movie. So it's like, yeah, it's hard to like kind of critique it in a sense because it's like, okay, yeah, you could have definitely cut this out, but at the same time,
Well, I
you have that ultra cut up version,
I
ultra shot
also think
version.
that there is an argument to be made that just because you can cut something out doesn't mean you necessarily should or that the movie benefits from it, right? Like a lot of scenes in here exist purely for aura, and I would argue that the movie benefits from that, right? Uh, until
Exactly.
you get to the last 20 minutes, and if I may just jump ahead and talk about that, I get it. Like I get why Snyder did that, right? It was his last hurrah. He was like, let me just fucking do this because I'm never gonna get to, right?
Mm.
So I get kind of why. I'm specifically referring to the nightmare scene in the Martian Manhunter singer. Um, I get why he did that, but at the same time, the movie, if it ended with Clark opening up his shirt, chef's kiss. That's perfect.
Yeah, I'm of
Um,
I'm of two minds with it. I agree with you, Jackson, completely. Like, I'd rather see the 4 hour version just to see everything. Like,
yeah,
it's so interesting and unique. But there is a third Justice League that is
Yeah.
this movie, but 2.5 hours. That is the perfect Justice League movie.
yes, I would agree with that.
I don't know how you make that. That would have been possible to do, but it exists in my mind somewhere, like
Yeah.
a truncated version of this that is awesome.
I would say like, yeah,
No,
I would
that's
say like
that's necessary.
slow mo. Some of it,
Yeah.
not all of it, because like I said, some of it is used for aura, you know. But it's like I think there was like a study or whatever. That's like 10% of this movie is slow mo. You know, even that alone, you could have cut down and easily got this down to a 3 hour, and then you cut down some more stuff. Like I know one specific
Aquaman.
scene that I would
Yeah.
definitely cut
Yeah.
out is like
That's always the
when
one.
Bruce and Aquaman are first like introduced,
Mm.
and like that choir is just singing,
No, I
and the
mean that
camera's just
that
panning
holds on
slowly through each of
to
them as they're singing
that
to
holds on for an
opera.
uncomfortably long amount of time.
Yo,
But like again, I get it. It's like I get why that is maybe the number one thing that I would have trimmed down. Um, but again, I understand why he left it in. I get it. It's like this is everything he shot, everything he wanted. We're leaving nothing on the cutting room floor. Like fuck it. Like this is my last hurrah. I'm gonna do everything. Like I get it.
It's very much like a concept
exactly.
film.
Yeah.
It's just like this would never have been the cut that they
No.
released in theaters, so it's fascinating to
And
see something like this.
on that point, I think it's fitting that we get into how this movie looks because it has a very different visual aesthetic than the past two. The past two Snyder DC films were shot on anamorphic lenses. Um, it sticks to the tradition that the DCU had up to this point on shooting on film. Both Suicide Squad and Justice League, or sorry, and Wonder Woman, which released in between this and the 2017 Justice. All right, so yeah, something else about this movie that I feel like is worth getting into right now is the look of it. So the previous two Snyder DC films have been shot on anamorphic lenses, and specifically, excuse me, BVS was shot on Panavision C series, which are for the listener at home, anamorphic. If you're watching a movie and it has those like really wide lens flares that you'll see in like a J.J. Abrams or Michael Bay movie, that's from the anamorphic lens. And the Panavision C series anamorphic lenses specifically are like some of the most widely used, renowned pieces of glass in Hollywood. They were used on Raiders of the Lost Ark, Close Encounters, Empire Strikes Back, the original Blade Runner, The Dark Knight. I think even to an extent, they're some of the most like Severance recently. They were used on Severance extensively, actually. But they have a very specific look to them, very distorted. Um, and that was a big part of the past two Snyder films' visual styles, in my opinion. And interestingly enough, while he still shot on 35 millimeter film on the Snyder Cut like he did in the previous two, he switched to a spherical lens. The Leica Summilux CC lenses, they're much sharper, much more objective. So you have a much different visual style in this than you do in the previous two. And obviously, it has the tall 4:3 aspect ratio as well. Um, yeah, I'm curious what you guys think of the aspect ratio.
My thing is that when this is all footage mostly that he shot originally for the theatrical
Yes,
like intention, and it definitely was not going to be four
it
by
would have
three
been cropped
square.
down.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me
So,
that
because if you go to the
it still works in both formats theoretically.
yeah, I mean, if you go to the Joss Whedon version, it's cropped down from
Mm-hmm.
what I had a very long argument with my dad about this because he was under the impression that the four by three they crop the sides, but that is the biggest, the most picture you can see in this
Right.
film is that four by three aspect ratio, um, because they shot with open matte, like that's the most image you're gonna see in this movie. It gives a really unique look to it as well. I don't think there's another comic book film that's shot with this aspect ratio, if I'm not
Nope,
mistaken.
it is the first and only.
Yeah, and obviously there are a lot of people who don't like that, but I really like it personally.
I love the four by three in general. I think
Yeah. Oh, I do
it's
too. It's a beautiful,
always.
beautiful looking.
I've always heard that people think it's like gimmicky,
Yeah.
but I honestly think it's the best way to really capture imagery because it, like you said,
Interesting.
it captures your full perspective
And Snyder
compared to
uses
a
the
wide.
aspect ratio really well, in my opinion, because there are quite a few shots in here that do these really beautiful frames within frames, and it just gives that extra level of dimension. Like Snyder uses, he wields the four by three aspect ratio really caringly. He uses it to his advantage in terms of the compositions he's crafting. I feel like he's not just doing it to do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think he's being precise with how he's
Yeah.
wielding the camera, as he always is. He's a very visual storyteller, especially in these three movies.
Yeah,
And so it makes me really happy to see people, more and more people, I feel like coming around to it, you know?
I will tell you, it looks stunning, especially in that black and white version.
Yeah, that's why I said I'm really curious about that. I don't think the movie as a whole looks quite as good as BVS, but it's still damn good looking film. Again, once again shot on 35 millimeter. They shot, I think, a lot of the things near the end, specifically the nightmare scene and the Martian Manhunter tag. They shot on a red 8K camera, so a digital camera. Weirdly enough, but the rest of it was shot on film, much like the other three Snyder films were, much like the two Wonder Woman films and Suicide Squad were.
One. So anyway, let's move into some story stuff because I want to get you guys overview on each character. I feel like there's a fun way to break it down, is each member of the league, but also let's talk about the general plot, which is the mother boxes and Steppenwolf coming in. He obviously was in the original Justice League, but in this one, he's a lot more of a bigger presence and a lot more intimidating, and he has the original design that Snyder intended.
Yeah.
And then we see Darkseid, which we didn't see in the original cut. We see a lot of more of Apocalypse. Jalen, I'll start with you. Like, how do you feel that they expanded on everything? Because it's pretty bare bones in the original.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very bare bones. I think the only person that gets like any true development of sorts is Superman and
Mm.
Batman, obviously. But like even for this one, there are like I could like say thousands of words on like each individual character and how they were expanded on this one. I do feel like certain characters could have been used in different roles. Like for instance, I feel like Wonder Woman was kind of just a plot device, like an exposition device, I mean, where it was like she was explaining like, where Darkseid comes from, where Steppenwolf comes from, what this thing means, what this thing means, certain aspects about that. But I do feel like, when it comes to all the characterizations from Flash, from Aquaman, from Cyborg, they each get their moment to shine. Like even like one of my favorite moments in this is like Cyborg's backstory. I think Ray Fisher might honestly be the MVP of this movie for me. Just like even, a scene that I love when he's hacking the database and you see him give that stack of money, or you like he fills that poor woman's bank account up, and like that is like genuinely one of my favorite scenes that I think I've seen in one of these movies, just because it does feel like the heart of a superhero, and it does feel like that hope that actually trying to help people and just do good for the sake of doing good, which I think gets lost and gets muddled sometimes in, or has gotten muddled in these DCEU
Yeah.
movies, specifically this trilogy, since we've been watching it from the jump.
No, I think they expand on everyone really well, even some to like a detriment where it may be too much. But I think specifically with the apocalypse stuff, I really enjoy the connections to Darkseid. I feel like they're setting up some really cool stuff, and I love the imagery. But the whole Mother Box plotline is very MacGuffin-y. I don't know if you guys feel like that. It's like let's get to point A and then point B and then point C, and then we have to get these boxes. It's not very engaging
Yeah,
of a main storyline.
Like it's a very
yeah,
big MacGuffin plot.
Yeah, and that's
exactly.
it's
Even
just not
like from a
something that got
certain
improved.
perspective, even from like a certain perspective, I feel like Steppenwolf, in a sense, I don't necessarily care. I don't care about him in either version, just because, you know, he is literally just there to retrieve the mother boxes and then get back. I think it's a fine motivation, but like I said, it is kind of just set up for a set of movies that will never come,
Mhm.
and that was kind of like what Steppenwolf's stakes as a villain were based off of, is that potential, you know. Actually, ironically enough, it's going to be kind of like a weird comparison, but like I'm not going to say motivations were the same, but I'm going to say the reason why the characters arrived, you know, as pawns of a bigger, badder threat
Yeah.
that I'm saying. Loki and Steppenwolf. Loki being used as the formation of the Avengers, and Steppenwolf being used as the formation of the Justice League. For Loki, it does feel like there is more than just world domination. It does feel like there is a little bit more depth there, and you did feel that. You did feel those stakes when that movie came out. Even now, when you rewatch the first Avengers movie, some stuff hasn't aged well, but I think that Loki's story and Loki's stakes as a villain still hold very strong. I think for Steppenwolf, granted, he's cool. He's so much cooler in this one than he is in Justice League, and he looks so much better. Like the upgrade is 1,000 times better look wise. But it's just like him as a
Yeah.
villain. I had trouble connecting with him. I think he might be my least favorite villain of the three. Zod, Luther, Steppenwolf.
I would agree. I think the big difference there, like you said, is that Loki just has so much more, and you have Tom Hiddleston, something like that, where Zack Snyder in these movies had a real like tendency to put out gray sludge villains. This was the
Yeah.
worst as Doomsday, which I complained about last week, but also I feel like Darkseid, Desaad, Steppenwolf. There's that first scene where Steppenwolf contacts Desaad for the mother box, and Desaad is like kind of distorted. He actually looks like awful, like just
Oh,
pure sludge. I mean, Jackson, do you feel like they were doing anything cool here with the apocalypse stuff?
I wish there was just a bit more color to it, a little bit more variety to the designs of Apocalypse. For sure. It does kind of read as generic gray bad guy
Mhm.
stuff. I think Darkseid has a cool presence. It's specifically Desaad that loses me. And Steppenwolf. I think one of them should have had some color.
I think Desai because he's really bright purple and
Yeah.
like yellow in the comics. And this one, it's just uh, even Darkseid. Like I love his presence, but his design is not like Darkseid is blue and like there's a lot more color even in the comics. Where this one is just I don't know. I think it's hyper realism for stuff that doesn't need to be hyper realistic because it's aliens.
Yeah, there are actually like two things that I really wanted to point out about Darkseid. One, he was worthy for a Green Lantern ring, and that would have been so cool to see if that would have like paid off in a late in Justice League Part Two or Part Three. If he
Hmm.
if you would have saw Darkseid with an actual Green Lantern ring, dude,
It's
I
so
would have
sick.
fainted like soups in the Superman screening, bro. But when it
Guts
comes
up.
to Darkseid as a character, he wasn't he wasn't I didn't feel I didn't feel that like big, this is like your guy, this is the person that everyone is supposed to be scared of. This is the person that is coming, like the big looming threat behind the current threat. Unlike, and not to compare again, but they literally are always compared, Thanos and Darkseid.
Mhm.
You know, there was a granted, you didn't really know about Thanos fully until like the post credit scene or whatever, but even like in that one moment, you did feel like, okay, this guy, he has something to him. You know what I mean? There's something there that's gonna make him, at least a little bit of a threat. And then more you kept building up to Thanos, you're like, oh, this guy is nothing to be messed with. But with Darkseid, granted he has a really cool action scene with the gods, the Atlanteans, the Amazonians, and the one Green Lantern. Um, but seeing him get beaten in his very first appearance, and it's a minor thing too, and it goes by so quick, does make it a little like it does lower the stakes a lot.
It's one of those things where, unlike like the League, I feel like the Apocalypse stuff really rests on what would have come in the other two
Yeah,
movies.
100%.
And
So,
even then, man, it does feel like it was never Darkseid. It felt like Darkseid was kind of like, yeah, he's the big bad, but he was always going to use Superman. People should have been more scared of Superman. Even they
yeah.
were scared of Superman, So it's like Superman was the threat, but Darkseid was just the king, I guess, that's using all these pieces, you know.
The the flashback scene of all the people fighting Darkseid's invasion is very Lord of the Rings coded for me, of when they like fight Sauron in the One Ring. But it is cool to see like all you get to see Ares and Zeus and even a Green Lantern for
I
you,
really
Jalen.
enjoyed that.
That's the only Green Lantern we ever got to see in the DCEU was like the little alien guy for 2 seconds in
And got
13
taken out.
movies.
They got taken out in the most insane way, bro. Bro got done dirty. Had like one blast and like a hammer.
Yeah. It was interesting too, again jumping ahead like we did before, but in that post-credit scene with Martian Manhunter, that wasn't going to be the original post-credits. It was going to be John Stewart, Green Lantern, but they said that they were going to use him for, I assume it was going to be the original idea for the Lantern show, and that's why they didn't want to use him. But Jalen, that would have been sick. They even had the guy, in costume and
They shot the
fitted out and
scene,
everything.
right?
They shot the whole scene. They were going to shoot it with Kilowog and John Stewart, and then they changed it to Kilowog and Martian Manhunter, and then John Stewart and Martian Manhunter, and then they said you have to cut John Stewart out, so then they did just Martian Manhunter,
Yeah.
is what
Yeah.
I read about.
Uh, okay, I'm gonna be honest. As a Green Lantern fan, that would have been cool to see on paper. From a story standpoint, I don't think Martian Manhunter or Green Lantern would have served too much of a purpose. Um, in any sense of the story. Even like
Hmm.
Martian Manhunter now, there are just some things like Martian Manhunter feels like a very shoehorned in character, just to kind of follow up on that theory that Swanwick is Martian Manhunter from Man of Steel and from BVS, and he's just been chilling this entire time. Granted, there is an interesting story there, to kind of like show how afraid he was of like showing himself to the world after seeing Superman and all, but then getting inspired, like so that hope that you're trying to go for here, but it still feels very shoehorned. Honestly, I feel like Martha Kent and Lois Lane were both shoehorned in this too, um, in ways that never bored me, but I wasn't fully brought in and interested in that aspect of the story as I was with like the main league stuff and some Steppenwolf stuff, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to save the Superman. Like, if we're gonna go by character, I want to save Superman for the very end. But I do like one particular scene with Lois. But otherwise, yeah, they're just kind of like you cut to her, and then she's just all sad about Superman. Doesn't really add much. I will say the cop she interacts with is our boy Mark McClure, who played Jimmy Olsen in the original Christopher Reeve
Oh,
movies.
really?
So
I didn't notice that.
he plays the Jimmy cop in this one that talks to Lois, which is really, really cool.
That's fun.
Let's go character by character. I want to talk about the new guys first, and then we'll touch on the old ones, and that'll wrap it up. Um, Aquaman, I feel like is the least there is to talk about. You know, you get some stuff about his heritage, some allusions to Orm, Volko, and Mera now in this movie, which I don't believe Mera was in the no, she was in the original,
It
but
was.
Volko wasn't in the
Well,
original. And there's also, like Jackson said earlier, a lot of aura farming with Aquaman in this one. He's the character that works the least for me of the league, where I feel like
so
I don't know if there's much of a storyline for his character, and it feels like a lot of setup for the movie Aquaman.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. It does. It
it
does.
it's a lot of setup for an Aquaman movie, which is unfortunate because it doesn't really click up with Aquaman all that well.
No, it doesn't. And like, because Mira's history doesn't align, and her hair
The
color is
accent.
different. The whole aesthetic is different. Also, another cut, but Mira in the post-credit scene in the nightmare thing, she has like a British accent
She has a British accent the whole
for
movie.
no. Oh, does she in the other scene too?
Yes.
It's really bad in the nightmare scene. I'm like, this does not sound like her at all. She's like Arthur.
No, because in the Whedon cut they dubbed over all of her dialogue
Hmm.
to give her not a
Oh,
British accent.
did they?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
then she doesn't have a British accent
Wow.
in Aquaman or Aquaman 2.
she does not.
So,
I wish I understand this is Zack Snyder's uncompromised vision, but that is one thing I really wish that he compromised. I wish he just did the same thing where he dubbed over every all of Mara's dialogue and made her not British because it's really bad.
right. Uh, but I don't know, Jackson, do you like Aquaman in this? I think Jason Momoa is just miscast a little bit.
I mean, he's fun. Yeah. I mean, this is a very similar thing where it's not a true honest to God take on Aquaman, but like
Hmm.
Momoa's good in the role. He's having fun. He has good chemistry with some of the characters. But again, a lot of it is set up for an Aquaman movie. And again, it just doesn't click up that well. Like I think they mentioned that Orm is the king, right?
Yeah, they do. He
Mhm.
is.
And
And that
correct me if I'm wrong.
he's trying to invade the surface or like start tensions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but none of that is the case in Aquaman, right?
I don't, he's like being appointed king
Oh,
or
okay.
trying to. So it's like, it doesn't really line up super well. And that's the th I feel like every other character of the league has a really emotional moment, but Aquaman doesn't.
Aquaman doesn't. Yeah.
And so I'm just excited to see Jason Momoa move on from this role because
Hello.
I feel like he was fun in the Aquaman movie where he gets to go ultra goofy, but like when he does
Yeah.
the serious stuff, I just don't align with it
Valid.
super well. The Flash is also in here. Ezra Miller, my Instagram mutual, is a fascinating presence in this. He has his
Yeah.
opening scene with Iris where he gets to save her, and then you get a lot of stuff with his dad. I think he's very, very much improved in this cut compared to the
Yes.
original, even though
Yeah.
they still have a lot of his dumb jokes in this one. And like I love his scene towards the end where he time travels and it connects to his dad. I think who plays his dad again? Billy Crudup, right? Is fantastic in this.
I was so devastated he wasn't back for the Flash. I remember where I was when that announcement hit. I was at my brother. I was at a high school football game.
Mm.
My brother was performing at. He was in the marching band. Uh, and I remember just being so fucking sad that he wasn't coming back because he's in all of 2 minutes in
He's
this movie,
wonderful.
and he's wonderful. It's one of the best scenes in the whole film.
Yeah, it's such a tragedy. I would, I was like, I was like, man, I remembered, and I was like, oh yeah, he's not in the Flash movie, and that makes the Flash movie worse. Even though the new actor's fine, it's just Billy Crudup
It's not
was,
the same.
yeah. But anyway, I think Ezra Miller's fun in this.
Yeah,
I don't love the opening scene with the Iris save, just because I feel
it's
like
a
him
little
like
janky.
being all creepy with touching her and with hot dogs and stuff. I'm like,
The close up of the CGI sesame seed. too always gets me.
Mhm.
Like I think that's really funny.
Yeah, I think they just tried to do their own Quicksilver moment, but it
Yeah.
doesn't land. I don't know, Jalen, do you have
No,
any
no, it
flash
doesn't.
thoughts?
I severely don't like this portrayal. This portrayal is not good in any sense of the word. Ezra is an interesting person themselves, but
Hmm.
um, when it comes to the character of Barry Allen, and like I get that this was never supposed to be the main, DC straight one of one adaptation like the MCU is, but I think Barry is just one like Jason Momoa is one that I could move past. You
Yeah,
know, Henry Cavill is one that I could also move past with just better writing. Um, Gal Gadot was serviceable in that first movie, right? But when it comes to Barry, it is just the biggest misfire. Like I can't, I get trying to make him the comedic relief of the team because you always need a comedic relief to provide some levity, but it just doesn't feel it doesn't feel natural, and like I do love that Billy Crudup scene, the that scene is great on his side, but I I was struggling to connect fully with it just because of this Barry just doesn't it's not Barry. It
yeah,
is it feels like a mix of Wally and Bart Allen with no signs of Barry other than the fact that he's a forensic scientist. When you look at it, Wally's a forensic scientist too, and so is Bart. You know, so like it doesn't. It just doesn't feel like Barry other than a love interest. And
that's
even
fair.
that scene was creepy. Now I will say that turning back time scene,
Mm,
incredible, like chills every single time I watch it. You know what I mean? Just because it's so good, and the CGI, the visual effects on that looks so insanely like fire. And I would have loved to have seen what you know Ezra Miller's Flash movie that was supposed to come immediately after this in the original slate was gonna do instead of, because I know they probably weren't gonna do Flashpoint, but
Yeah.
um it would have been interesting to see that.
mm,
However, I think in both movies, Ezra Miller proved why they don't work for me as any adaptation of Barry Allen.
that's very
No
understandable.
matter how you twist it. You know.
Do you guys remember the Oscar thing where this scene won an Oscar because of a fan vote and all the Snyder people like flooded it? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
this is technically an Oscar-winning scene, the turn back time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so
Yeah.
funny.
And then the last one here, who's the biggest of the new characters, because they completely like give
Yeah.
him so much more as Cyborg. Ray Fisher has not been in a lot of stuff. This is like pretty much one of his first big roles, and he hasn't done much since. I think he's good. He's really good in this. But as an actor as a whole, based on some of his other work, because I've seen him in True Detective, and obviously he was really not great in Rebel Moon.
He's in True Detective.
He's in True Detective season 3.
Hmm.
Yes. I I don't really latch on with him as an act, and maybe that's also because of the whole movement where he just started going after people like left and right
Yeah.
over the whole fallout, which is completely valid on his part with how people screwed him over, but he just like kept going for years to the point where it's like you got to move on, man. This was like years after the Snyder Cut. But anyway, I like Cyborg in this. I just would also love a little more personality because he is kind of dry. He has the Henry Cavill thing where it's a little too much dour, emotional, like stoicism,
Hmm. Hmm.
maybe.
That's interesting because I feel like here it works, whereas with Cavill is a good amount of times
I,
where
I
it
would
doesn't.
okay. To bounce off of that, I kind of agree with you, Jalen, because I feel like they set Cyborg up into a place where it's like, yeah, this guy would be just completely dead inside, right? Like
Hmm.
they put him in a basically the worst position anybody could ever be in, you know?
Yeah.
So I do feel like it works better than it does for Cavill, for sure.
Yeah, I think I just would have liked to see him open up more, maybe towards the back half of
Yeah.
the movie, because even at the end of it, it doesn't feel like he gets along with anyone on the team.
And
Feels
I
like
see,
get
he's
that.
very
I think
just story motivated to be there.
I, ironically enough, this kind of happens in the New 52 too, where it's like he never fully messes with the Justice League because they are all significantly older than he is, except for Barry. It's in this version. In the comics, he's significantly older, but in this version, I think Barry's supposed to be 23, and Cyborg is supposed to be like 18, 17, somewhere around there, right? And in the new, because I think that Zack Snyder was trying to base it roughly off of the New 52 run, and in that run, Cyborg, he kind of splits off from the Justice League a lot. He remains a member, but he splits off and works in Titans multiple times because he sees them as more, he connects with that younger side more. Not saying that there was ever going to be a Teen Titans movie in development because I don't think there ever was. And I don't think that would even fit in this type of world. But I do kind of like it a little bit just because it does show how uncomfortable he is in his situation, in his body.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like such a compelling part of this version of Cyborg. And that's kind of why he's the MVP, because you can see that nuance. You can see that uncomfortability in his team, in his fit with the teammates, whereas like he does good and that's what brings him that joy. But it still is like that little bit of reserve where it's like Barry can go back to being a forensic scientist and live a normal life. Aquaman can go back to drinking at a random bar or whatever.
Yeah.
Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman can all have these normal lives. He can't.
Right.
People are constantly going to be looking at him in a certain type of way. And it's like he's happy he could be saving people, but there is still like that reserved sense of like, man, like, okay, I do this, but
Yeah.
I'm not normal.
And
That's a
I think to
good
bring
perspective on it.
yeah, and I think basically everything you're saying, Jalen, is exactly why he is handily the most improved upon character in this cut of the movie compared to the theatrical. Because none of that is present in Joss Whedon's version of this movie.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Because he even says booyah in the Justice League theatrical
Yeah.
cut, doesn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, that's you made some good points, Jalen. I feel like I do really connect with it. I just wish maybe towards the end he opened
Yeah.
up a little more. We just got more of those dynamics, especially because I would love to see Cyborg was supposed to be part of the Flash movie for the longest time because he and Barry were
Yeah,
supposed to have
actually, he's
good
supposed to be part of Andy
dynamics.
Muschietti's Flash.
Right, he was supposed to be part of the Flash, and it's based on their dynamic. I just don't feel their dynamic in this at all.
Mm.
Where
Right,
if they
yeah.
would have started in the Flash, I would have been like, okay, this is like new stuff then. But yeah,
Yeah, I do.
that's my thoughts on those. If anything, this movie does the good service, like you said, of making Cyborg an actual character, and for that, it's worth watching alone. I'm so curious what his solo movie would have been. Cyborg 2020 that they announced like
Apparently
in
the main
2014.
villain, yeah, apparently the main villain, because Ray Fisher ended up coming out about it. Like, because they had like a rough story detail, like who the villain was, what the rough story was going to be. It was, like I said, going to be a battle of technology.
Mhm.
Ryan Choi would have been a bigger part of the story and eventually lead into an Atom project that Zack Snyder pitched. Um, which Ryan Choi was in it for, a few seconds, a few minutes.
Right.
And apparently the villains would have been this cybernetic group called the Phantom Limbs, which are all army amputees, people who
Hmm.
lost their limbs in service, and they're looking at Star Labs for that type of technology that Cyborg has for them.
That's pretty cool
Except for it
though.
starts getting sold illegally, and they get those, which is why they're called the Phantom Limbs.
That sounds sick.
Yeah, it actually sounded kind of good.
But I don't think we would have needed it because this movie is essentially like he's close to the main character. So I don't know if we needed a whole solo movie for him.
Yeah.
But um Wonder Woman is so funny in this because they have that fuck ass what's it called? Enchanted music that plays. They're like why am I like lamentation music? That's what it says in the subtitles every time. Yeah, it's so annoying every time it plays, and
It's
it kind of
bad.
ruins the whole I don't say it ruins the character, but it definitely dampers her compared to
It
the
gets
like
really
the
corny
Rockstar theme.
really
I love
quick.
that. I love the Rockstar theme, even though that's also overplayed in the DCEU. But at least
But
that's
it,
not
but
hard to listen
weirdly,
to.
it's not in this movie that much.
No, it's not. It said it
And I
as this
kind of
other
forgot.
like lamentation music, which sucks. Like it's
It's
annoying.
not very good. It's cool like the first couple times, but it just becomes so overplayed because it's like anytime you cut to Wonder Woman, that shit is playing. Which granted, it's the same thing with Batman. Every time you cut to fucking Batman, his theme plays, but it's a lot less abrasive than that is.
Yeah, but the difference is like Batman's theme is cool. Wonder
The
Woman's
Batman
theme is
theme is
cool. The lamentation music sucks ass.
no, it's not good. It's not good.
Um, Jackson, do you have any thoughts about her character in this?
No, it's kind of the same boat as Aquaman, where
Aura?
he doesn't really do all that much or have that much like emotional weight. She's just kind of there. And
She's
Okay.
that's
an exposition device.
huh?
She's an exposition device. She's
Yes,
just there for
basically
Completely.
that's
exposition.
her purpose. Yeah.
But she mentioned Steve Trevor.
She does mention Steve Trevor.
Yeah, especially it's
There
funnier.
are a couple people from Wonder Woman that are in this movie.
It's funny that Wonder Woman 1984 takes place before this because it's so tonally.
So funny.
What a weird. I don't know. I'm the most ready to move on from Gal Gadot Wonder Woman out
Yes.
of all these League
100%.
members, and
100%.
this movie kind of solidified it. Even though I do respect her bringing like an adaptation to life because we never got it before, I don't really respect her now, and I'm just ready to move on from
Yeah, I agree with
the whole
that.
thing. Batman, on the other hand, these past couple watches have just made me
So,
miss Ben Affleck. I think I want the Ben Affleck solo movie, like
Dude, Ben
crack.
Affleck was so good. Ben Affleck is
this is
so
the
good.
best he is in any of the DCU movies.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Bro, even like there's like a small moment, like a small difference and like the tonal shift between Justice League and this one is so like it
Yeah.
works in Ben Affleck's favor so much. Even like there's like a
Outs,
small scene. Yeah, go ahead. What were you about to say?
outs, I would before you continue, I just want to say like outside of Cyborg, Batman is the most improved character in this movie.
Oh yeah, for a fact. He's so much more like he kind
Batman.
of reminds me a little bit of the DCAU
Mm.
Batman. Just because like even like there's a small moment where like when he first encounters Aquaman in the Justice League version, he's cracking so many jokes,
Yeah.
and it gets old very quickly, and you can tell that this is not the same Batman that we had,
Yeah.
seen in BVS and at that point Suicide Squad, which you saw a little taste of. But it was like there was like a small moment where someone tried to make a joke and like Ben Affleck just like he like looks around like kind of like analyzing the space, but he stays serious and he stays stoic the entire time, and he genuinely just doesn't care what happens to him in that moment. He's just worried about getting that advantage and getting that leverage on the conversation enough to get Aquaman to join him. Granted he fails, but you never kind of see him in that state where he's like, "Oh man, I'm failing at bringing all these people together. I failed at Superman's legacy, yada yada yada," as you see in the Justice League version. But in this version, he's so I don't know, man. I just love it, yo. Like before Pattinson, and even like part like I love Pattinson to death. I mean, granted, we've only seen one movie with him, and it was a great introduction. But it's like I think that Ben Affleck might still be my favorite, especially after these most recent rewatches. Ben Affleck might be my favorite Batman.
But yeah, Jalen, like you were saying, Batman has such drive in this, and when he says like that whole line where he's like, "He's never fought us, not us united."
That's the best line in the
I
whole
know it's a
movie.
marketing thing, but damn, I
It's tough.
was I was there, man. I is also when Deathstroke shows up on the yacht, which by the way is also a much improved scene just from like
It's
shots and stuff.
awesome. And
I'm
it has you know who it has in it?
oh we'll get into that.
Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse
I
Eisenberg,
love
the GOAT.
that.
I just mourn the Ben Affleck Batman movie with Deathstroke as the villain.
Yeah.
Even if it would have sucked, man, I want to see it so bad. It would have
I
been
don't think
so
it would have
cool.
sucked either. That's the worst part.
No, Ben Affleck's a good director. He's proven, so
Yeah.
it would have been sick. But yeah, he gets a lot here, and he's way better than Justice League because in Justice League he gets to like ow, that hurts and dumb
Yeah.
moments like that. Or even like simple things. Like he has the same I'm rich line in this, but for some reason it's just works better.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I love Batman. Lastly, I saved him for the end because this is our final wrap up. Let's talk about Henry Cavill Superman one more time. First off, we get a few of his supporting cast that carried over the whole trilogy. Like Jalen mentioned, we had Martha and Lois in this one. Swanwick's in it. Now we know he's Martian Manhunter. I think those are the only two
Yeah, no Perry
carryover.
in this
Oh,
one.
I guess we get a little bit of Jesse Eisenberg Lex. Yeah, no Perry White though. I don't think he would have fit anywhere though.
I don't know what he would have done.
Um, I kind of over the course of these movies, I've realized that when the last time I watched them, I was very much Black Adam brained and just excited for Henry Cavill because over the course of these three movies, I'm sinking on this performance and this version of Superman.
Oop,
And that makes me sad because I
oop. You
there's
said
a
it from
time
the
and
beginning.
place. I just but Jackson, you also said he's like really good in these two, right? In
I
BVS
think
and
he's the best in BVS.
yeah, I think he's the best in BVS. I don't know, I like him in Man of Steel. They're both equal. This one I think is his weakest.
No, I agree with that.
I just think
No
there's
doubt.
like he
No,
comes
I agree.
back and there's a little bit of aura with the whole him getting the new suit and having the dialogue from his fathers, but I just don't think he's like near as emotive as you'd want, especially from a resurrected Superman that should be a
Yeah.
little more lighthearted. He never gets that swing
Not
back.
impressed. Not
Mm-mm.
impressed.
Not
Fuck up.
impressed. Like, bro,
Yeah.
okay. Jalen, you, Henry Cavill, this movie, how we feeling? No?
This is my least favorite of the three. Yeah, it's just a no for me. And I do feel like with some good writing, he would have a little bit more to work with as an actor because I don't think he's a bad actor. I just think that the script doesn't really give him too much. None of these scripts have really given him too much to work with except for BBS. Even that still was like I would have liked to have seen more.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me. Like the whole black suit thing, this whole thing of like the whole "do you bleed?" Like kind of like I said, like I feel like the Superman resurrection scene is maybe my least favorite scene in all three of these movies.
Yeah, I don't get
Like
that.
the same kind of like tied there. No, I like the Jonathan Kent death and the Jonathan Kent moments in Man of Steel a little less, but when it comes to the Superman resurrection scene, it just I hate that whole evil Superman for no reason because he doesn't remember. It just makes no sense to me, and he's just straight up trying to kill these people.
It's a
You
very
know?
trailer moment type
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, and it like legitimately makes no sense, to me. And this is small. This is very small. But I feel like once Superman regained his memory, right, and then came back, the first thing that comic Superman, or I think most versions of Superman would have done, is make a a kind of like a dorky joke about it, maybe like a sorry or something like that, and then just kept it pushing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you kind of get none of that.
He just leaves.
Um, he just leaves. You know. So
My whole
yeah,
thing is that he just doesn't have any connection to any of these
Oh,
characters. And even so,
besides
like
that, Wonder
when they
Woman.
resurrect him and he goes to like fuck off with Lois, the League just kind of moves on without him. They're like, all right, guess we're gonna go
Yeah,
fight.
exactly.
He feels surprisingly non-consequential to the point where I don't even feel like we needed to revive him.
Yeah.
I don't think he
No, I
really
feel like
changes
I
the
feel like
outcome of the fight. They lose still when they have Superman.
yeah, like it feels like he could have just been like this looming figure, in the background that is the symbol that unites the League, in that way. Um, and just had like Batman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Aquaman, and Flash kind of do their own thing and be that triumphant team, and then maybe tease Superman's return or something, or maybe
In
have
like the
him
next
return
one,
in
that would
some
have been
way.
cool.
Yeah, and the next one, especially because this is going to go part two, then part three. Um,
Yeah, I also, this might be a bad take. I haven't seen Justice League in a while, but
mm,
mustache aside, I remember liking the phone scene with the kids because I felt like that added at least a little bit of levity and like
I'm gonna
optimism.
be I'm
I
gonna
don't
be
remember the
honest.
full scene though. It's been a long time.
Ironically enough, I remember liking some aspects of that Superman a little bit more because it finally was that goodness and that hope that you had been searching for. And like part of I can partially understand the tone shift a little bit because he just died and
Mm.
he came back and now has the love of his life. You would kind of have a renewed look on life, you know. Um, but I think both versions still don't work in the bigger picture.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I was very high on Henry Cavill prior to doing these podcasts, and now I'm like, I think it was less talking about the movies and more so watching the Christopher Reeve and Brandon Routh versions
Mhm.
made me recontextualize the Henry Cavill one
Yeah.
a lot. I don't know, Jackson, do you have any closing thoughts on Cavill's
I've said
run?
peace.
Yeah. It's crazy that he is only
Amy
in these
Adams is
three
still not there.
movies and then like post credits in Black Adam. Like
Yeah.
what a weird pipeline of
And like three faceless cameos.
and three faceless cameos. Um, do we have anything else? There's a lot of other random characters in this one. I don't know if there's any that you want to mention of the like side
Mm.
character because you get like Ryan Choi, you get Martian Manhunter, the
Yeah.
Nightmare stuff.
Cool, like world building. I just think that in the bigger picture, I don't know if when it's all said and done, this whole universe would have worked, especially with some of the ideas that Snyder was going to have, specifically the whole Lois Lane pregnancy bit. That was going to be a really, really big plot point.
I think
Oh,
it honestly be a really interesting episode to do just
we
entirely on what the
we
plans
should.
were.
I want to talk about that. And I don't want to just breeze over it.
But it was not very great from what I saw.
Yeah, because presumably in this movie, she's pregnant with Bruce Wayne's child,
Oh,
right?
Is that the
Presumably,
implication?
that's
because
all.
according to Snyder's plans, they were kind of like he helped her during her grief, and of course, one thing led to another,
See, but
and
that
she
doesn't make any
and
sense
like
because this movie takes
she
place a few weeks after.
exactly. But the thing is that she thinks it's Clark's, but I think eventually she comes to find out that it's Bruce's.
But see, if that's canon, bro, or like the intention, that means Bruce was hooking up with her a few weeks after Clark died. Ain't no way, bro. That's
That's yeah. That's
that
why we
doesn't make
gotta have
any
an
sense because
episode
she
on
can't
this,
even go
bro.
to work. She can't even go back to the Daily Planet. There's no way she's like hooking up with
Exactly, and like
Batman.
I don't think with Superman being alive, I don't think there's a world that she would have cheated. You know, it would have had to have
Yeah.
happened. That whole plot point had to have happened during this time of grief.
No, even if Superman died, you don't sleep with one of the other League members.
That's what I'm saying. This universe wouldn't have worked.
That's what I'm saying. We need to talk about
Yeah.
these
That
movies.
goes against any bro code, girl code,
Yeah.
person code, whatever it be. That is, yeah. We'll have to do a whole episode on it. I think Jared Leto's scene isn't very good in this. Rewatching it,
Reach around.
you want to? We live in a society. Yeah, I don't think he looks very good either. I don't like his long hair. Some of the nightmare designs are cool. I like the Flash's like armor, and Deathstroke looks cool. But yeah, the whole nightmare thing, like you said, Jackson, I felt like Snyder just kind of wanted to put it in,
Yeah, which I get.
but like it kind of the BVS nightmare sequences are better
Yeah.
by a mile. This one's just kind of and again, it set up like you said, Jay, on the evil Superman trope, which was so overdone. I don't understand. Like Cavill was already dark enough, and then they want to tease evil Superman after we just get him back.
On one hand, I could, I guess, kind of see what Snyder was trying to go for on this whole commentary thing of like, a being with all this power is trying so hard not to
Hmm.
be liked, but to show people that they can trust him at the
Yeah.
very least. He doesn't have to be liked by everybody, but he is trustworthy. And then to ultimately turn him around, the greatest to the universe. Which also another point, I think the whole fact that Darkseid and Apocalypse were literally waiting to retrieve these mother boxes until Superman died, and a scream kind of was their beacon. I think that's stupid. I think that is so stupid, and it doesn't work. And at the same time, it is kind of making your villains of this entire thing look weak to the point where it's like Superman is your main villain. And I think that's what Snyder was always planning on doing. Is the threat isn't Darkseid, the threat is Superman from beginning to end, and we're kind of seeing this from the human perspective.
Yeah, I think the
You know.
Superman scream, like you're right, Jalen, especially because they set up a scene in BVS where Lex Luthor is communing with Steppenwolf. Like that's how
Hmm.
Steppenwolf can know that he can go to Earth. Like he doesn't need
Yeah.
Superman backshot scream reverberating throughout the.
Reverberating throughout the entire world. It's not even just in that vicinity. It's the world, the ocean, they felt it in some mascara. I don't understand. It's stupid. It is so stupid.
Yeah, hype moments and aura, the definition of this movie, man. Let's do a rating. Where are we at? I'm a thumbs up, but I'm like
Yeah, yeah, I'll get things up. I'll get
but
things
it's definitely lost a lot of its luster that you get when you first watch it.
Hmm.
But I still think it's really fun. It's so unique and interesting.
up.
Yeah. That should be it for this week. Next week is the big one, boys.
Superman.
Superman. All right. Look up. See you soon.